Good day. This is Mounir Ajam from Sukat Corp. And I want to start my presentation by giving my special appreciation and thanks to the PM guru, Mr. Adesh Jain, and his team for organizing the World Project Management Forum. I'm happy to be here today, and this is my second World Project Management Forum appearance. I was there in New Delhi last year, and unfortunately, this time it is virtual, but still better than nothing. My topic today is about leading mega projects, the challenges and opportunities. I'm going to cover four topics as you can see here, but to focus really on the first three. I'll start with the challenges in the current state of practice on mega project, and then I will shift the discussion to talk about opportunities, and there are many opportunities, but I will put a special emphasis on building the organizational competence and capacity. And then I would go to the third topic, which is a tailored approach camp for mega projects, which basically we have developed based on the challenges and the opportunities in our work in this area. And then we close with a call to action and a summary of the whole presentation. However, first, I need to talk about the basis for this presentation, which is my work that took, my work over my entire career. However, the work for this specific book took about a little bit more than 12 months, and it was published almost exactly a year ago. This book, Leading Megaproject, a Tailored Approach, actually technically consists of two books in one. About 2/3 of the book, I focus on providing the knowledge foundation, the research that work we have done, the current state of practice, opportunities that I will be summarizing in this presentation today. But in the second part, part B of the book, which is about 1/3 of the book, I actually demonstrate the tailored approach via a simulation of a realistic mega project. I cannot document a whole mega project here for many reasons, including confidentiality, and obviously these will be done by organization, and organization are not necessarily willing to publish their detail. So what I've done is that based on the knowledge foundation, we have developed a tailored approach, which is a camp for mega project, and then we did a simulation of a realistic mega project by going through the project lifecycle from the concept all the way through completion, and demonstrating the various steps in the model. Now, it's important to first align our thinking. I know based on my attendance in the World Project Management Forum last year, and this year there are a lot of people will be in attendance, and probably 100, if not thousand of people will be seeing this presentation. So it's important to mention a critical point here, which is the focus whenever it comes to mega project and large and complex project is on the project owner. So emphasis on project owner, although the information is project management and it's useful for everybody. However, the message, my target audience here is project owner organization. And although the focus is on mega project, most challenges here apply to all capital project, including non-capital project. A lot of the thinking in project management apply everywhere. However, the emphasis here is on capital intensive project. These are engineering construction facilities. Now, what's the common definition of a mega project? What's the definition of a mega project? Unfortunately, we do not have a common definition, at least a universal definition for what is a mega project. However, in the capital project industry, many would agree that $1 billion plus is a threshold that would classify project as a mega project. Anything less than $1 billion, it could be considered major project. However, I've worked in multiple different countries. In some situation, 1 billion dirham, for example, in the UAE, which could be about less than 300 million US, it can be considered mega. So the definition of mega, we don't need to get hung up too much on the definition of being 1 billion plus. There are too many variables that goes into a definition. for argument's sake, for debate's sake, we'll consider anything that is huge and complex facilities project as a mega project. Okay, with the introduction done, let's shift the focus on the challenges. And I call it the current state of practice. And as the pictures show, it's the tip of an iceberg. There are a lot of challenges when it comes to mega project. Obviously, by definition, a mega project is a complex initiative. It's a complex project, and as a result, the high level or the magnificent complexity in terms of size, cost, duration, stakeholders, politics. There are too many variables that impact mega project and create too many challenges that we have to deal with. So what are these challenges? Once again, first, I need to document is the source of information. And as I mentioned, the main source for this presentation is my book, but the source of information for my book, where did it come from? I had done, as I mentioned, the book took more than 12 months because it took a lot of time to do extensive literature research and from business and academic perspective. And I will share some of that research briefly in the next few slides. But there is some, unfortunately, there isn't significant research, but there are few references, and we have actually viewed as many as we can in terms of literature. And this would include, when I say literature, it includes books, academic paper, professional paper from organization, and any published material on mega project. I also share case studies of projects where we have been involved. Personally, I have been involved in 3 mega projects earlier in my career, and some of the learning for these case studies and for the book and for the presentation come from that work as well. And as SUCAD, as a company, we have done a lot of research as well in observation, research, observation from client that we work with in the region of the UAE, Saudi, and also based on numerous reviews of publication articles in the media that we gathered a lot of this information. So a lot of research has gone into this work, including research and case studies that we have been personally involved with. We emphasize that point because it's important, because one of the problems we've seen in a lot of the academic research is a lot of theories. A lot of academic researchers are researching from an academic perspective, but they did not have the practical know-how of working on mega project to understand. So in addition to our literature research, our learning came from being there, being in the trenches, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I share here a picture from one of the mega projects I was involved with. And although I cannot explain a lot on this mega project, maybe that require a separate presentation by itself. However, if we look at this project, there are so many variables and complexity of this project that when we talk about this project, everybody would think this project was definitely a failure. However, this was a success from a project management perspective. The focus here is on project management. And although this was done more than 25 years ago, when I've done my research for the Leading Megaproject books, a lot of what was considered best practices or leading practices that help in ensuring success, we actually did on that project. And so reflecting back when I was writing my book, reflecting back on my experience with this project, and I can see the amazing lessons that we have learned from there. And we were definitely doing the right things on that project, as again, as my research confirmed. Some statistics and valuable insight, and here I will go back to some of the research we've done. And let me start with IBA Study. And now, for those who are not familiar with IBA is an independent project analysis, and I think it's a leading organization in terms of benchmarking project and capital project industry. And there's a book written by the founder of IPA, Mr. Edward Morrow, who did a study of 318 industrial megaprojects. And in that book, the average, let me show the books below. The book's called Industrial Megaproject. The average capital investment of those 318 projects was $3.2 billion, but the range was somewhere between 1 to 20 billion. That is in 2011 or before, because the book was published in 2011. Based on the study, 35% of the project were considered successful based on the IPA success criteria. Now, there are different type of industries in the study. Some of them, the success was close to 20% only. In some project, in some industries, success was higher. On average, of these 318 projects, 35% were considered successful. I just want to touch here on the last bullet point. The best contracting approach is a mix. Now, what we're talking about here. Obviously, there are a lot of, in many places around the world, and there is a heavy focus on using only fixed price contracting, believing it is probably a best approach. Well, not necessarily so. What the books found out is that based on the research that was this book, is that whether you use fixed price contracting or reimbursable cost plus contracting, the result were about the same. And the conclusion was that the best contracting type was a mix, which briefly mean, and of course this require more discussion, but doing the engineering and the major equipment procurement on a cost plus basis, and then construction on a fixed price basis. And in either case, managed by the owner. Okay. Again, this require, by itself, this is a major discussion. We just need to provide the brief summaries here. Another IPA book called Capital Project did a study on capital project that is below the mega size. And there are thousands of projects in the database of IPA. And the conclusion came that about 60% are successful. And for those who are successful, although the project were profitable, so basically the project will consider producing profit, on average, those projects lost 22% of their net present value. Now, what does it mean? What it means, let's say a project was started where the owner believed that they will make $100 million profit on the project. Just for number size, make it easy. $100 million expected profit. Or the net present value could be $5 billion, whatever the case might be. But remember, the net present value indirectly relate to profit. They lost 22% of that. That means they were still profitable, but instead of achieving 100 million net present value, they achieved only, my math it doesn't help me now, 78 million. So they lost 22%. It's even worse if the company did not properly use a stage gate process. The loss was up to 45%. Again, the project will still end up being profitable, which means in some people would consider that success. But the project lost 45% of the net present value that was anticipated when the project was approved and launched. Moving on, I've done a lot of studies as well, other books, including the Oxford Handbook for Mega Projects, and many independent papers. I don't have a chance to list them, all of them here. And I'm sharing the theme here. The theme that I was able to gather from most of these books, including IPA and the paper that we have, is that project success and failure is predetermined in the front end. Unfortunately, a lot of work, and when we see posting online, we talk about success and failure, they're focusing only on the engineering construction part of the project. So they focus on overrun of the project cost in terms of budget, which was approved just before we go into engineering construction. However, even though the project overrun and delays that happen in the what some people call execution part of the project, the implementation stage of the project, the problem started earlier. And therefore, what the conclusion came, and we agree with that, and a lot of the research as well, is that project success and failure is predetermined in the front end. The front end meaning in the early stages of the project, from concept to feasibility to defining requirement to scoping to shaping and framing the project opportunity. A lot of the stuff happened there. If we don't do that right, then the whole project is set on a route that is less than optimal and potentially could lead to failure. Also, what some of the studies found that is most of the overrun, if we think of the whole project across its life cycle, not only the implementation part, is that most overrun occur in the front end. So basically, let's say, when after the feasibility study, the organization expected the project to cost 100 million. Use 100 million number, or a billion if we talk about mega project, it costs $1 billion. By the time the project is done in the preliminary engineering, the scoping and the preliminary engineering, and get to the point of final funding, probably the project have already grown by X%. And then after final approval, if they still get approved, then during the implementation part, the other third come up. So basically, if we think across the whole life cycle, about 2/3 of the growth is due to the front end. Now, this is we're emphasizing that point because that's critical for us if we need to learn how to lead mega project concept to success. Now, when it comes to infrastructure, if we consider mega project and facilities, we can group them into industrial, into buildings, and infrastructure. And infrastructure, obviously, a lot of those will be done by government typically. Some of the numbers we've seen are really amazing, and sometimes they're questionable. Is that only 1 in 1,000 projects are successful? But I think this is a stretch. However, it's clear that these projects do worse than industrial projects. Now, okay, we shared the stats. We shared some of the numbers. Now, what are the causes of failure? There could be hundreds of causes. We group the root causes. If we look at if we try to go down from the symptom to the root cause, we can group these things into 3 major categories. Which is, we call it project owner, lack of OPM and best practices, and people aspect. However, really in reality, it goes back to project owner. So, and this is why the emphasis of the audience of this presentation is project owner. What project owner can do to minimize failure, and that will be our focus in the opportunity section of this. Now, unfortunately, I will not be able to go into a lot of details. You have the presentation, and maybe in the future we can do more presentation on this topic. The project owner, basically, we can summarize it in these key points. The situation vary, and allow me to read. Globally, since there are project owners with good or excellent project management maturity, while others live the illusion of project management best practice. What does that mean? A lot of organizations think, we can do a great job, but in reality, when we start digging down, they're not doing such a good job. Over the years, many project owners have lost their organizational competence and capacity to lead mega project, and the primary reason was due to business and financially driven myths. And what do I mean here? I think I cannot just leave this slide here. I just need to emphasize this. Many project owner, talking about decades ago, in the 80s, is that a lot of the finance MBAs, schools, they start focusing on why owner need to be so heavy, why project owner need to be so heavy, why don't they outsource? So they start to move toward outsourcing, and as a result, many big organization in the industrial facilities, they said, why do we need to have project management and engineering in our organization where there are specialized companies out there who can do the same? So they start to push costs as a cost reduction opportunities. We will outsource. However, that was a major mistake that caused a lot of impact, as you will see next. Because of the move toward outsourcing, what happened is that if we go through the cycle here, the cycle of doom that I like to call, they started, all project owners start to become dependent or over, and I use the word over dependence on outsourcing, contractors, management consultant, and not only for managing the project or engineering the project, also for the front end. Okay. As a result, when you start to depend more on contractor, your internal technical competence start to drop. So declining technical and project management competence. With a declining competence, you result as declining capacity, which mean going back to over dependence on the contractors and consultant more and more. And then lack of front-end scope definition, contractors are not operator. What do we mean by this one? So as a result, as I mentioned, over-dependence on contractor, declining competence, declining capacity, meaning end up depending more and more dependence on contractor, even in the front end. The problem is many engineering companies in the front end, which is a lot of the work that require significant integration with operation and the business side. Well, engineering companies are not operators. Probably most of their staff have never been inside an operating facility, an operating plant. So they lack the operation know-how. They're sure they can study it and learn about it and they can talk of the operator, but they haven't lived it. They don't know enough about it. They don't have the easy access to people in communication to be able. As a result, that's one factor. There are many other factors. We end up having too many problems in the front end. What makes things complicated, and I use the red symbol, the red shading here, is that during those parts, from the project management perspective, even from the contractor perspective, there is an absence of formal project management. So that means unless the project is finally financed and approved, which is after preliminary engineering, after the front end design is done, there is no project management. Changes happening, scope creep, scope growth. There are a lot of things that are happening because there is no proper control or project management being done at that part, because that part is considered low cost. Sure, it is low cost, probably less than 3% of the total installed cost that is spent during that period, during the front end. However, the impact is significant, because if we don't do it properly, there will be gaps in engineering, and there will be error engineering. Gaps and error engineering lead to gaps and error in construction. Gaps and error in construction lead to gaps and error in startup and commissioning. And you can see how the cycle of doom end up. So mistakes or lack of clarity or lack of formal design or objective definition in the early stages, the front end part of the project, could cause significant downstream problems and error, and ultimately project failure. If you continue the cycle of doom, which basically is a chain reaction, as we mentioned, poor project owner competence, right, and capacity to lead mega project, lack of effective, as a result, because that create a lack of effective and mature organizational project management system. Ultimately, that result is a people aspect culture, which is affected and create poor leadership. I will stress this on the next slide, or 2 points actually. So first, remember we said project owner, and we talk about organization and competence and capacity. But because project owner have lost their edge, if you wish, they probably do not have a proper organizational project management system, which lead to many issues and challenges. There are many of them here, and I cannot explain all of them. This is a mind map that we did. Are some of the challenges based on our research in the book that is related to what I call the organization system, which means if an organization design and build a proper organizational project management system, they will be able to minimize or eliminate a lot of these challenges that happen. For example, in risk management, illusion of risk transfer. And what I mean here is that, we use a fixed price contracting, so the risks are transferred to the contractor. That's definitely an illusion. If we look at control, cost reduction games, you're going to hear me talk about games, and in the book, I talk about games a lot. Procurement, culture of fixed price, and what even worse, fixed price plus culture of low bid. That's a lethal combination. And there are many others as well. Some of those others below that I put here on the right are usually related to the stage gate process or project management methodology, which is one of the reasons we developed a tailored approach. And illusion of best practices, I touched on this earlier, and I highlighted the word illusion here. And actually, in my book, I use the word illusion a lot. There is a lot of illusion when it comes to risk transfer, illusion of cost reduction, illusion of best practice. And again, there are to my knowledge, there is no project management association among the leading one, whether IPMA or PMI, that is offering project management best practices, and definitely not for mega project. I'm not aware of a single guide or a standard or a publication by either PMI or IPMA, for example, on mega project. I know IPMA had organized some event and conferences around mega project, and they probably published some transcripts from those event, but there is no published reference or guide. Again, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but that's how I see it. Whether we're talking about mega project or regular project, a lot of people confuse common practice with best practice. In the construction capital project industry, CII is and IPA are major source of best practices information. Unfortunately, many client project owner organization do not know these organizations exist, or if they know they exist, they ignore them, or they don't see the value, or they think they're too expensive. For some reason or another, many of them do not fully practice or implement best practices on their project. And one reason for that, because best practices require discipline and the proper integration of the project lifecycle in the organization system, which many organizations do not do, especially if they have lost that competence that we have been talking about. All of that combined lead to the absence of an effective OPM system, the less than desired competence that actually lead to the cultural aspect that takes over, which mean that there are poor team leadership, arrogance, competence, lack of experience, you name it. There are many issues when it comes to leadership in mega project. Frequent turnover of project leadership, especially on the business side. As you know, in many organizations, executive, they're probably promoted or moved or from one side to the business to another side every year or 2 or 3. And mega project usually lasts 6 to 10 years. So often enough, if not the most often, is that the person who started the mega project is never there to see it complete, which means maybe they don't do a good enough job. Now, whether unconscious or not unconscious, that's to be debated. We don't see integration of the project owner personnel. We see cost reduction in games, and ultimately a blame culture exists. Project owner blames the PMCs, PMC blame the contractor, contractor blame the subcontractors, and there's no one else to be blamed. There are many other challenges, but I don't need to talk about them here. Again, this is a huge discussion. So now we talked about the challenges. We talked about the status, the current state of practice in project management. What are the opportunities? There are many opportunities, obviously, and I'll just touch on a few of them. I start with a question. And I was giving a course on organization project management in Singapore a few years ago, and one of my friends drew the box, what you see in the middle here. Is that to implement proper project management in organization, we need to consider the corporate processes, we need to consider the business processes, we need to consider the organizational processes. In a way, all of these relate to the culture of organization. However, he drew with it the chain that the organizational culture is holding us back. So I came back to my office and asked my graphic designer to redraw that picture using graphics like this, and then put the balloon as well, which leads to the question: is your organizational culture holding you down or lifting you up? I will let you ponder about this question and think about it as you continue in this conference and then when you go back to your office. So for us, culture is critical, and as a critical concept is to build the culture, the project management culture, what I call it the winning culture. And to do this, we need to remember that when it comes to proper project management, we need to think people, process, and tools. And again, I'm sure some of you have seen this before, so I'm not going to emphasize on it. And the circle on the right, I will touch on it in the upcoming slide. The first opportunity that we should consider in leading mega project is leading practices or best practices. And to me, for the capital project industry, I'm aware of two major references here: the Construction Industry Institute, CII, and IPA, which I had mentioned already before. Some of their best practices or leading practices include concept of partnering, modularization, constructability. You can read them all here. I cannot explain each one of them because each one of them is actually CII, for example, give a course or there's a huge guide on each one of these topics. But there are many topics, and for those who have been involved in the capital project industry, you're probably familiar with some of them. But no, I just want to touch here on these two. And both of them could be considered equivalent because PDRI is from CII and the FEL is from IPA. So, but basically both of them are a mechanism or an index that is used that organization can do to assess the proper or the level of development during the front end. So as the organization do front end, before they actually finally approve the project and finance it to go forward to engineering and construction, there are these tools, the PDRI or the FEL index, that can be used by organization to determine have they worked enough in the front end to be able to go to the next to implementation. And if not, organization usually that believe in this in these type of indices, they would say go back and we need to do more work before we can give the final authorization to proceed into implementation. So there are tools out there. These are type of the tools that organization can use to help define the clarity of objective and the front end work. Now, how to build the organization project management function? SUCAD have developed a model that we call the 7 element of project management maturity that include these 7 elements here. The core is about methodology, which is project lifecycle processes and functions that are required into any methodology. Then we have the advanced topic. We have the leadership and professional development across the organization. We have the knowledge management and organizational learning. But again, all of this means nothing if the organization is not willing to regain their capabilities, their competence, their capacity to manage mega project. If they want to continue to depend on PMCs and contractor, then obviously this will continue to be an issue. Again, I'm not able to go into detail at this stage. That this is a model that SUCAD developed. I'm sure there are many other models out there that organization can use to build their organization project management function. In other words, what we believe that is organization need to start a cultural shift. And what we believe a cultural shift is a necessity to build and sustain the organizational competence. Now, what does that mean? Briefly, it means we need to start to shift from the idea of a project management office to a project management function. Now, what do you mean by a function? That means a formally recognized project management function, a department, a division in the company. Now, usually in capital industry, many organizations have done that already. But unfortunately, we still have seen and worked with many organizations who believe the project management office is good enough, and they have not built a project management function. Now, what's the difference? The difference is that the project management function is formally recognized as a department, as a division, which means project management is equal function to that is considered as important as finance or IT or any other department within the company. For those who are interested in this topic, we have many videos and articles on our blog site and YouTube channel on this topic. In capital project in general and mega project for sure, we need to move from the idea of isolated project management team to integrated team. And by integrated team, that we could mean two parts. First, within the project owner. Integrating team include project management people, technical people, operation people, business people. All of these should be involved in the team. They shouldn't be considered like in many organizations. They look, we have a project management department or project management team leading the project, and business and operation are customers. We need to integrate those together. They need to work together. That I showed the picture of one of the mega project I worked on earlier in this presentation. That's what we had. We had integrated project team, business, operation people, project management people, all working together, sitting in the trailers, in the construction site, and sitting in the engineering office when we were doing engineering. Project owner need to shift their overdependence and dependence on PMCs toward project owner-led team. I think IPA's research on mega project have determined that it's projects that are led by the project owner have performed much better than project led by PMCs. Managing project in isolation toward integrated project management with asset and product management. There are many other opportunities again, but I need to summarize them. As we summarize them here only, obviously the book is there for those who want to get more in-depth coverage. And we will be doing also video series on this in the near future. The tailored approach, in order not to make this presentation into a commercial, I just want to highlight and touch on it very quickly with a few slides. CAMP, the foundation for the CAMP is this book that we published 3 years ago that described CAMP as a methodological approach for managing different type of project, including small, simple, medium, moderate complexity, and large and complex. And then the book on mega project, we started with this book and then we created a version that is CAMP for mega projects. CAMP, I skip a slide, that's fine. We don't need to focus on it too much. The standard life cycle for CAMP model is available on our website and various resources. Some of the critical success factor for CAMP. This is not mega project. Obviously, it applied to mega project, but it is general CAMP. Is that we identified 11. I'm only showing 9 here, and I highlighted the 5 that I think the most important for the mega project, which is linking the project management methodology to organizational system, tailor to the project to a given classification. So mega project is a classification. Follow the stage gate process, that's critical. Consider product delivery and project management processes, and incorporate industry leading practices. Some of these you've already been hearing me talking about, so I do not need to emphasize them. Now, mega project critical success factor, and that came obviously from our work and from the research we have done. And I'll only touch on a few of them as well. Formalize the shaping process. That means early on in the project, during the feasibility, and even before when the concept of the project is being developed, there are a lot of work need to be done on what IPA called shaping or framing of the opportunity. And that look into many, many, many factors. Again, I cannot go in depth. Remember the front-end loading definition. We need to have robust project control in real time. I did not talk about that earlier. Control the luck and effect. Maybe this is something worth a few seconds here. What do we mean by this? An organization start working on a mega project and they come up with cost. Said, okay, good. Later on, they will come back and the cost has gone up too much. And instead of reconsidering the project or maybe stopping the project, they feel like we are already locked in. We already spent so much money. We cannot stop. Let's continue. So they become locked into the cycle of doom. I mean, although the project, probably the early indicator, they're starting to show that it's not going as well as it should be, but they're locked. They don't feel like they can reverse their decision, even though it's early in the game. And the last one here is scrutiny of the need for mega project. And what does it mean is that people love, I mean, the idea of building the biggest, the largest, the tallest. This culture that exists today in our engineer, we always want to be, obviously, uh, you know, uh, being involved in a building in Dubai is not as sexy or as appealing on a CV versus I've worked on Burj Khalifa, yeah, or I've worked on a small dam in a village somewhere versus worked on the Hoover Dam or the name escaped me, the big dam in China. So it, we don't always have the message here is we don't always have to do mega project. Often enough, what could be what we think is a mega project could be broken down and maybe only done as a program in pieces as a smaller major project. Now, why do we need to consider this? Because obviously the research shows we do better on major project than on mega project. Almost done, so I will just close with a couple more slides. So as based on our research and the work we have done, what we've noticed is that we need to remember we've been promoting the integrated project management with process management with organization. And we came up with a model that look at the project management from 4 aspects. I will touch on it in a life cycle model. And you notice in this life cycle model, the standard model in SUCAD talk about discovery, development, and delivery phase, but below it, there are many stages. And notice now we have 3 streams. We have the facility stream, which is a typical project management, such as the engineering, the construction, the typical project management from a facility perspective. However, we include the governance or the business stream in the middle, and we include production. And for example, if I go around and start with at the end of discovery phase, you notice there is gate 2 after the feasibility, which is part of the facilities and including the shaping. What that means is the same gate. And that what that imply is that gate need to consider aspect from both sides. If we go to gate 4, and that is appear in 3 different places. And that basically, again, to emphasize the point that we cannot look at the project from one stream. We have to look at the integration. How can we integrate the facilities part with the business and governance part with the production and operation part? So this is the basic, or this is the camp for mega project model. Of course, this is not set in stone. It could vary from organization to another or one project to another, but just as a high level view. And this is another view of the same thing using more like a Visio process chart, the same thing as well. And you can look at the detail at your convenience. Closing with a call to action. And most of this, as you have seen, is we already talk about culture, rebuilding the organizational competence and capacity, treat the project as an integral part of asset management, and that the tailored approach shows that adopt best and leading practices, build and sustain the organizational project management system, utilize effective and integrated stage gate, and most important is project owner must shift to lead their project and reduce their overdependence on PMC. And with this, we say thank you. And I hope this presentation has been useful. And as I mentioned, we will be posting articles and videos on mega project from our books probably early next year. I wish you all success today, tomorrow, and always. Mounir Ajam, thank you.